In this video, we're going to be talking about ICP's weekly candle close. What does that mean for the short term and the long term? Why has ICP not moved the way the other cryptos have moved? And where is ICP going to go in the future? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, how are my snipers doing today? I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Listen, today we're talking about the one and only ICP, right? Let's start off with talking about how the weekly candle closed. Is it important how impactful it is where it closed, or is it just something that isn't too relevant? Ladies and gentlemen, when we look at the candle closes, right, we can remove something like the wick because that is just noise. You guys have to realize that where the candles close is extremely, extremely important, right? We can see that right away that for many, many weeks, we're kind of closing just break even, right? We're kind of closing just break even ever since late March, mid-April, or sorry, late April, and then even mid-June, we kind of just closed around 4.55, 4.60, right? And we can see practically ever since then, especially ever since mid-June, we actually something actually did change, right? Because when we go look at the candle tops right over here, we can see back in March we closed at 583. Back in May, the beginning of May, we closed boom at 578. And then boom, once again, back in beginning of June, we closed at 556. So what was happening? Well, ladies and gentlemen, the roof was going lower and lower, right? The roof was going lower and lower. The floor was kind of staying the same. So, we were getting a little bit squished. And then we can see that ever since practically late June, we have actually been printing candles towards the upside. We can see in terms of our floor, right? We printed a weekly candle close at 483. And then when we started to make the roof, right, we printed one at 544, right? 544. And ladies and gentlemen, boom, we can see that we were getting squished. The roof was getting lower and the floor was finally getting higher. So ICP had to decide. And we can see we actually had a very important candle mid-July. And for the first time in practically months, we closed the highest weekly candle we've ever had, which is at 597. Okay. So, that was a very, very good sign. That was a break of structure to the upside. Okay. And we can see the last 2 weeks we have sold off. And last week we had a very, very important candle because we did not want to close back around 483 because that would actually just disregard the work we had 2 weeks ago with this nice weekly candle pump. So what happened, ladies and gentlemen, we closed actually really, really well. We closed at 511. So we can see, right? We can see that the floor is continuously going up higher, and I do expect ICP to break out soon. Now, some people might be saying, well, why hasn't ICP broke out? Why are other altcoins doing better? Why are other altcoins, performing better? Why are they pumping more? And, I even showed it in the Turbo video where Turbo has gone up a drastic amount while something like ICP has been just literally sitting in the same zone for months now. Now, here's the deal, people, right? Every coin moves differently. And, there's other narratives and other coins that are going to be in the spotlight, right? Meme coins are always going to be hot. People are degenerates. People love to gamble. People love high risk, high reward. I am one of those people myself. I like high risk, high reward. I invest in a coin to try to flip it. At the end of the day, it has no real value. That's just how crypto works. But, ladies and gentlemen, there's also a part two to this. The part two is that we are actually below a very, very big support and resistance, right? Since we're below it, it is like resistance, it is a roof. And in order for us to break out of this roof and to be successful, is going to require a lot of momentum, right? It's going to require a lot of purchasing power. And to sometimes accumulate this purchasing power, you have to go sideways for quite a while. You have to accumulate for a while, for at least sometimes weeks or months to really burst out of a huge zone, right? A zone that's going to require a lot of purchasing power, right? Because right now we could have pumped a little bit, but then we probably would have got rejected and the same thing would have happened. which is why I do believe still ICP is set to explode most likely in August, right? I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I do believe it is set to explode most likely in August, if maybe in September. But we still have, multiple weeks to go. We practically still have, 27, 28 days, something like that to go. So, there's still a lot of time. And all it takes is that just 1 week of pumping, right? 1 week of pumping. Speaking about Turbo, like I talked about earlier, Turbo did the exact same thing, just faster, right? It was below a massive, massive resistance. And then it looked slow until 1 week, it just pumped drastically high, right? We can see in 1 week, it did some crazy numbers, roughly 183%. So that's kind of what I expect with ICP. Okay. I know it's not a meme coin. It is a great coin in terms of fundamentals. The project is fantastic, but you have to realize, you know, there are other narratives that are a little bit hotter right now and a little bit more, not necessarily respected, but just in the spotlight. And that's just how the markets work. But I do believe ICP's time is here. Like it's going to be here sooner than later. And I do expect huge momentum very, very soon. But we can see, ladies and gentlemen, right? This resistance, it's no joke. There's so much price action over here, right? There's so much price action. And I do believe once we burst to the upside, we're going to see a very, very nice weekly candle, probably a little bit of a sell off, but then we're just going to continue to go up higher and higher. I really do believe the same thing that happened all the way back in 2023, upwards of early 2024, is going to happen with ICP again, where we have one top, two top, one top, two top, floor, floor, dip, dip, fail to go up, dip, fail to go up, dip, sideways, sideways, up, up, burst, right? Burst. Like I really do believe the same thing is going to literally happen just on a higher scale. I do believe ICP will jump to roughly $30 very, very quickly because that's where we have a nice weekly institutional candle. And that's also where we have a lot of resistance again. So it would not surprise me if we do see ICP go to 30 something dollars, sell off probably back to low 20s, right? A retest off of this zone would not surprise me right over here because we would have multiple tops and bottoms, right? If we look over here, boom, we have this floor, we have this roof, we have this roof. So, going to 30 to $35 and then selling back to 20 to low 20s to then burst up for our final push to $70, that just seems like the literal blueprint for me. And I expect for that to just play out. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that is ultimately it. I hope you guys did enjoy. We will still look at one more thing, right? We will go to the ICP data. Do not lose hope in this project. It's a top 38 project for a reason. Has 53 million volume in the last 24 hours, 2.8 billion market cap. Uh, you know, there's a reason why people believe in it. There's a reason why I do believe it's going to be one of those coins that at least hits a 15x. ICP back to 2800. Could it really happen again? I think no. Well, you're absolutely right. ICP will not go to 2800. Ladies and gentlemen, that would be to go up to $500 would require 280 billion market cap. Just so you guys understand. So, yeah, ICP will definitely not be going to $2,800. But yeah, that is it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys did enjoy, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Goodbye.